You know what? I'm going to have to restart this.
All right.
All right. We're back now.
Back again.
Back again. So we're short a crew member because Sumi's schedule got a little wonky. All of our schedules got a little wonky out and it didn't mesh for the time being.
That
Schedule
happens.
meshing.
Yeah. So he's still working on the show. He's just not on camera for a period of time, I guess. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
Roll with it.
The three of us are going to do this for a bit and see how it goes. So today we got the CEO.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
The femme fatale, Melissa Haueter.
The boss.
We got the venerable Chris Haueter.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Tobin, the producer here. Thumbs up. I forgot to switch the cameras to you guys when we were just doing that, but that's fine. Yeah, we'll go with that. And today we're talking about Rickson Gracie. Regarding Rickson Gracie, I think what's interesting is that, Chris, you've been learning from Rickson for a period of time.
For about the last 10 years, yes.
And that's a unique thing. And we want to hear about that and just talk about Rickson's life a little bit and what your experience has been with him, and you too, Melissa. So to kick it off, real quick, just...
Well, all right. So it's one of those things, like, this is just me personally. I don't really have heroes. I don't have, like, sports athletes I idolize. Growing up, I didn't have that. If I'm going to have a hero, it's usually someone like Isaac Newton or Einstein or Darwin. But in the martial arts world, there's only one Rickson Gracie. And I've often said that Gracie jiu-jitsu would be a myth without Rickson. Rickson gives life and reality and is the legend. And so... You know, like, there's people out there, I'm sure, who've never trained with Rickson at all, who have a way better grasp of his history, the things he's written, what he's talked about, like have much more of an in-depth historical profile of who Rickson is. What I feel like I have is that valuable experience of being taught by Rickson, seeing him go through his arc in life, and as I become an aging grappler and want to grow my practice of the art of jiu-jitsu, Rickson is the perfect role model in every way.
That's awesome. And yeah, that's exactly what I think is interesting.
It's like when I first, Rickson was the third Gracie I met. So the first one was Horion. And I'll just to make my background just again real brief. I fought one pro Muay Thai fight. I was practicing Kali, JKD, weapons, all that stuff. But I was longing for wrestling. Something told me that I wanted to be grappling. You know, I'm learning how to box, how to punch, but as a high school wrestler, I loved that. And I've always found that in real fights, the person who gets the clinch generally wins. That if you can close that gap, I'm going to do a wrestling double leg, bring you on the ground, put you in a headlock, and punch you. And I remember overhearing that there was this really good judo family out of Brazil. And I remember asking one of my fellow higher-ups in the Jeet Kundo Kali world, who are these guys? And he didn't really like them that much because they ran around and challenged people, stormed schools and all that. And it actually kind of scared me. I'm like, wow, really? That's gnarly. He's like, yeah, they think it's a special art, but really it's just really a good judo and blah, blah, blah. And I remember hearing that, and it was probably a few months after where I went to the El Camino College wrestling room with the intention of joining the wrestling team. And before that class was Mitz Yamashita, who taught the Aikido club that was on the mat. And it was after the class was over, him and about 3 other Aikido guys are on the mat, and he was showing them the upa escape out of a mount. And I remember as a wrestler, we don't mount, thinking that would be easy. You just turn around and escape. And I go, Mitz, I don't think that would work. I'm a wrestler, blah, blah. And he says, okay, try it. And I turned, exposed my back, and I was choked. And I was like, no way. Let me try again. And I did one more. I kind of half escaped, and I ended up in an armbar. And I'm like, I remember just being blown away that I got to learn this Aikido. I had no idea you guys had this total ground art. And he says, well, we don't. This is a special art called Gracie jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, how do I learn it? And he wrote down Horion's number. And when I got home, I called it immediately. And Horion answered. I scheduled my first private. I absolutely couldn't wait. And so Horion was the first guy I met. The second one was Hoist during my first private. And then I met Rickson in passing on my way out. And I know this sounds really corny, but you could sense immediately that Rickson was the guy. Like, it was not just looks, the way he carried himself in this patriarchal honor culture, like, wow, that's the guy there. And I always say it's like with some of the other Brazilians and the Gracies I met, I would come across them being cocky, and Rickson wasn't at all. But he was confident. It was this feeling overwhelming, like this guy really must know his shit. And I kept trying to get my schedule rearranged because I'm doing Hoist privates. Nothing against Hoist, but I really wanted one with Rickson or that other guy, Hegan. Because I tell Hegan seemed really nice. And so when I was watching Horion handle the schedule, I could see where Hoist was off and it was all scratched out. And I'd be like, oh God, I can't train that. Can I train on? And I'd be glancing over and I got a Hegan, a private, and a Rickson. And then I ended up Hegan's main guy, which I was really glad because Horion goes, we have the schedule, but if you're always off on Wednesdays or whatever it is, I'm going to change. You're now with Hegan. Because one of the things I loved about Hegan is Hegan asked me what I want to learn. And I wanted to learn this ground stuff, not how to block a knife and these Aikido-y jiu-jitsu moves. I wanted to learn this art, which I experienced from like white belts and knew these guys are the black belts. And you had to be approved of to do a group class by your private coach. And before the Gracie Academy opened, I got to go to a group class, and Rickson was running it. And I don't know if it was that week or the week after, but I watched Rickson line everyone up and go through all of them. And the only guy he had slightly hard one with is Hegan. And it was like watching the master. And like I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like whatever it is, Rickson had it. So short story longer. So when the family all split up, one time I'm over at Hegan's. The mats were moved out of the garage. Hegan looked worried. He's explaining what happened. And Chris, you stay with me here. My cousin's going to come over. I was expecting Horion. And it was Rickson. And they had obviously not mad at each other, but a very heated thing. Like you're going, shut the budget, no Horion, blah, blah, blah. And they ended up hugging. And he left. And I'm like, what happened? And Hegan's like, we're all on our own now. And then like I remember thinking, wow, like I'm the first one to find this news out. I mean, there wasn't a ton of us then, and I was still enrolled at Horion's newly opened academy. And I was either Monday, Wednesdays, I was there or whatever. So I'm helping Hegan do his privates because he wanted to help her. So I'm getting privates from Hegan for free. And I'm going to Horion's new academy, a group class. And then somehow Keegan still had his name on a door. And I realized that Horion was offering him a chance to come back. And Rickson had a name on a door. And Rickson, the first month, he came and he taught one evening a week. And I would go to that class. And then he moved to Palisades and he was working on going to Japan or like whatever it was. So he kind of was gone. And it's not like I ever chose Keegan over Rickson, but Keegan was not only a great coach, but he was practical and really nice. Like he's a very practical, pragmatic. He lived 3 blocks away and I just ended up there. And I always kind of wanted to go with Rickson. And then years pass and now I'm a black belt. And I competed in the first black belt match I had. Rickson was the ref. And I was like going, oh my God, I'm going to lose this fight in front of Rickson. This is awful. And I won. And it felt just so good. And afterwards, you know, he said, your jiu-jitsu's gotten a lot better, blah, blah, blah. And so more years pass, and I go to a seminar where Rickson taught. And there is myths that run around. And in the early days, all of the black belts, including me, could basically line up a room and go through everyone. Some would be harder, but it was kind of before the jiu-jitsu essence was out in the universe. And I remember this period where suddenly everybody at least knew what the arm bar was. Whereas in the early days, they would just stick their arm out. You know, you pull them in the guard, they'd do this on your neck, and you'd arm lock them. And that awareness came shortly after UFC 1. And Rickson was known as a guy who could line up all the black belts. And I compete in Brazil, lose my match. I'm at the main group class. I'm excited because there's black belts everywhere. Like where back in the U.S. there's only us, and I get a roll with black belts. And I watched John Machado roll with 3 guys, one who just won like light heavyweight mundials, one who placed. I watched John like pretty much just litter these guys, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember thinking, but John, why don't you compete? And he's like, nah, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to do acting more and all that. And then John said, like, you think I go through these guys? My cousin Rickson go through the whole room. And then that would be the rumor that we would hear for years. And I know there was one point, Peter McGuire, who was at his school in Palisades, said that there was one time where 3 of the best guys came to a Rickson class. Not as a challenge, but to come. And Rickson immediately just lined everyone at the wall, went on the mat, pulled them all out, and just mopped these like guys who just won mundials, just cleaned them up. And so the rumors that you hear are true about Rickson, but they're not true about the other ones. And some people say Rickson lost a sambo match once. I don't know. But as far as I know, Rickson has never lost an official jiu-jitsu or MMA fight.
What do you think that was? Is it his technical abilities, his spirit, or what?
So because I've been lucky enough to train with Rickson a lot in the last 10 years, I have another perspective of like why he's so good. Back then, I thought it was like not only, I mean, he was clearly a specimen. He was a light heavyweight, so he was fast enough, big enough to still be fast and apply weight. And it was almost like, you know, people say like sports is like 1/3 mind, 1/3 knowledge, 1/3 body. His third of mind, it was almost like he did not believe it was possible for him to ever lose. like I could imagine if Rickson was losing whatever it was, in his mind, he would be thinking, no, I'm going to escape. I'll escape. And it was like he carried himself like it was almost magical. It really was like a feeling of overwhelming, like with Hegan. Higgins knows he's lost some matches, he's won some, knew he's good, knows in the game I'm good. Hoist was kind of cocky, knew he hadn't gone against any of the current world's best, but knew he was like known as like the guy. So he had a lot riding on him because of the Gracie propaganda. The world thought that Hoist was the toughest man in the world. And Hoist would say, no, my cousin, man, so much better. And
Isn't that his brother?
His brother, yeah. And Hegan would pretty much mop up Hoist. I'm not going to say mop him up really easily, but, and so everybody just kind of said, everybody who I ever met who knew Rickson all had a Rickson a story. And sometimes I wondered, okay, is this real or is it myth, right? But then I would run into the guys who would say, no, it's absolutely real. Because my memory of him was a blue belt, and then no years of Rickson at all. And then really just in the last, like, I think I went to a Rickson seminar 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was a lot. That I was with you, right?
Yes.
I think it was when I was a new black belt, so like 2011. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like 14 years ago.
And so then I found out Rickson has a class at a Crohn's. And I began going, it was a Wednesday morning, like 10 a.m. class. And I remember being so mad that I didn't know because it had been happening for like a year. And it's like the last I heard is he vanished to Brazil and was doing crazy monkey meditation and all that.
He was in the movie with the one about Hulk.
Yes. Yeah, he was in Hulk. And I remember when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, Rickson's in this movie. How fucking cool. And that character who Rickson plays, that is Rickson.
He just played himself. No acting
Yes,
involved.
no acting. And he has, like, I call it, because I like my threes, is he has absolutely balanced and mastered the three things. Like a mind, a body, and spirit. And he integrates it in a way that when he instructs I'm just going to kind of skip ahead. I remember I was in a mini group private with Rickson. This is about 5 years ago. And I think there was 4 of us. And I realized after we walked out of there that the knowledge that they got was different than what I got. And in some ways, I think, and this might sound arrogant, in some ways, like way back then, I wasn't ready for what Rickson had. I could learn that same armbar from a purple belt. This is step 1, step 2, 3. Yeah, Rickson would be a little tighter. It would be all that. And when I called Rickson like years back because at a Crohn's he left and I was like totally bummed. So but I asked him, is there any way I could like meet you, would do privates? And he was like really cool about it. And he's like, yes, but Gracie goes, there's no jiu-jitsu that I'm going to show you that you don't already know. But what I'm going to teach you is the essence of jiu-jitsu. And some people aren't ready. You are ready, which is like really cool. And I'm like, all honored. Oh my God, I can't wait. And then fucking COVID happened. And his class had ended. We like scheduled like the week after I get back from Australia, I'm doing Rickson privates. And then fucking COVID came. And I often said that then, like, that was one of the things that made me so mad about COVID. Like, fuck, that took my Rickson privates away. And so we all know what that was like. We're all trying to do the jiu-jitsu. I talked to him on the phone, and he's explaining how I'm going to make these big instructional programs to go over all the moves. But one thing I knew is that you weren't going to see that on Rickson showing an armbar. or an escape, that you have to feel it. And it's that thing where it's true that, Chris, this is the invisible part of jiu-jitsu. And it's a feeling. And like, I feel like just from those little experiences, and then the last 8 years privates, like I finally feel and can sort of do what he's talking about. And it completely changed my approach 100%. Like, as a younger grappler, I am an athlete who does the jiu-jitsu moves. And the art is kind of hidden in there. It's like, have you ever had, one of the things, when I see like a really skilled guy instruct a move, sometimes now I can see the part they aren't showing because they're unaware of it. And that's like, for me, the gift I've gotten is now I can find it. And I always think, God, it's too bad I'm old now. And then he laughed at that and he goes, I know. And then one time I go, but I know if I needed one more match, I'm 21 again. He laughed and he goes, yes, I think I have that. And then, but I'm not wasting it on a young athletic purple belt. So it kind of rearranged how I train. And in the last 8 years, the way Rickson teaches is, yes, he shows step 1, 2, and 3, but he emphasizes parts that we would gloss over in the past. And I would feel his slight shift of weight. I would feel where he tucks underneath. I would feel how something that seemingly it looks easy becomes simple yet highly complex.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing you say that he breaks down things into micro movements. Is it something more than that
It's
you're
more
talking
than that.
about?
Yeah. It's really hard to actually explain. I can show you, and I could show you like little things I've learned. And like after every class, I feel like my brain is trying to remember whatever it was I picked up. And I would chant, remember 3 things. Just remember 3 things. Because sometimes, I'd be there like 3 hours and we'd go over all kinds of stuff. Most of it I know. And then all of a sudden there'd be one little thing that I didn't realize I didn't know. And I'd be like, I'm sticking to that little chunk of knowledge. And a lot of it is, it's a certain feel where the way to find it is to utterly relax everything. Then find the frames, but don't be rigid where they flow to. And then it's about adjusting yourself to your opponent's movements and skill. And again, a lot of this is stuff like you'll go, that's what I already do. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought. Like, that's what but like when you feel him do it, you get this different sense.
So maybe it's like he's developed a system, whether it came naturally to him in his mind or whatever, but he has a way of explaining stuff that we naturally do, but like on the next level.
Yes.
So we do all do that. Adjust
we do.
Our games to different opponents, and we're in the moment feeling it. But he does it better and explains it better than any of us.
And again, yeah.
Words.
What has like really helped me is I think he's 6 years older than me, 8 years older. I don't remember.
59. So he's 9 years older than you. Born. Wait, no. Were you born in 64?
64.
Okay, so 5 years older than you.
Yeah. And of course he's been racked. I mean, all of us martial artists, when we're older, have our owies and our injuries. But, he had a really bad back for a long time, a bad hip. I remember hearing him tell someone, I think it was not the Zulu fight, but one of them, that in the match, he hurt his back and he drove like through it. And I've read most of his book. When Peter McGuire was helping to write his book, when he was in LA, he would come over to my garage, and like him and I would either train or he would bounce things off, how do you think I ought to ask Rickson about this and all that? And I'm like, I don't know. You know him well. And one of the things that
was
Peter...
Breathe? Was that book?
Breathe, yes. Rickson trusted Peter because he's like a trustable guy. And I know that everything that in Rickson's life is not in that book. The things that Rickson did not want to be in the book aren't in the book, because that's the kind of guy that Peter is. And
he has a second book now.
yes.
And Peter wrote that too?
And yes, and he mailed me a copy, a Rickson signed copy, and I haven't read it yet.
Pass it over, I'll read it.
I have so many hundreds of books that I'm like behind on my reading list. It drives me nuts. But yeah.
One thing.
So no, ask a question.
Oh, so one thing I was curious about is I've always had this sense with Rickson that he's sort of inaccessible, right? Like you explained this long period of time where
there were periods
was
of
not
time
around,
where he was, yes.
and it kind of seems like today.
Oh no, he
even,
still is.
Yes.
He still is. You're right, Tobin.
Yeah.
He still is inaccessible because you have to know somebody to be able to go to the private. You can't just like call them up and be like, "Hey, I want to go to the private."
Right.
You basically have to be in this group or know somebody in the group to get invited to the private, and then you have to have the money to pay for it because it ain't cheap.
No. I think, if I'm not wrong, on his website, there's an application that you fill out, and his wife reads all that stuff, I think. And one of the things really cool about him, unlike all of us who are glued on our phones all the time, he hates staring at the phones. And he only answers his like text one day out of the week. So like you'll be waiting on this return text forever, and then all of a sudden he responds.
I bet that's really good for his spirit
Very
and his
good,
mind.
yes.
And maybe even his body, because he
Absolutely.
can focus on other
Yep.
things
Mhm.
besides being locked into this screen world
Yes.
that is totally unnatural
That's
for
changing
humans.
our entire
Changing
world.
us into
Yeah.
Wall-E. We're going to have our big gulps and our screens and float around. We aren't
Yep.
even going to have any bones or muscles anymore. We're just going to be blobs.
Yeah. Yeah, Rickson
Big
is
gulp tastes
not
good, though.
a screen guy.
Big gulp.
He's not like hooked on texting or any of that. And I highly recommend anyone to read Breathe, because that book, which I read 3/4 of it, really does like give you a view of who Rickson is, his personality, his life, how it's changed over the years, how it's like I think there are combat sports athletes who reach a high level and then kind of ride the fame a while, occasionally show what moves got them to win, and then they age, they get a little slower and all that, and that is the course. With Rickson, it's like the art part never stopped. He was always growing the art. And there was one time where I remember I think I was in Hawaii, and I'm eating with like Rickson, Helson, Hegan, like all these like I feel like I'm at the mob table because I'm a black belt, and like I'm in the mob but not really in the mob. And I remember that night Rickson was talking about how he's been working on, and not a new way, and it's mostly like I couldn't understand all of it, and I remember asking, oh my gosh, what is he talking about? About how he's now changed the way you do a move. And it's like, so he's approaching it like a confident student. Not just a student, I'm humble, I don't know anything. And not like, oh, I know jiu-jitsu. It was like, he had that balance where like he was growing his art. And not that like Keegan and John Jack, these guys were also growing their art. And John Jack would go to Rickson to ask him if whatever he's working on is good. Like he's just always been kind of the guru of jiu-jitsu.
I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, it reminds me of any time I've done something and I'm fully engaged in it. And I'm not like, oh yeah, I don't know anything. And I'm not like, I know everything. I'm kind of right in the middle there, like fully attached to figuring it out and trying to improve it.
It's like both Dan Inosanto and Rickson Gracie approach martial arts at first always as a student, and that the art is more powerful than you. It isn't about, I'm going to get this art and show the world. It's the art is what it's all about. And you're just a guy who gets to carry the art, teach the art, and pass on the endless art.
Well, that's the thing that I'm curious about, is because it seems like due to his dominance in competition setting and in the training room, that Rickson Gracie jiu-jitsu is the jiu-jitsu that like everybody wants a piece of.
Yeah.
And so as somebody going through jiu-jitsu, I'm always kind of like, why isn't that the franchise that is in every single corner of every single place?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was sort of presuming based on just like martial arts movies, like I kind of feel like the master teacher is always kind of reluctant to take on students from this attitude of that, like the students aren't worthy of his time. That's the story, you know, like in Kill Bill,
I
Pai Mei
get
is
that, and in some ways you're right, but it's not done from a perspective that Rickson's thinking you're not worthy. What it is you're not ready more.
But
And-
also, I think that just like kind of relating it to my own experience, I don't know if this is true about Rickson, but just because somebody's good at something doesn't mean they're good at selling it.
Yes.
And if your focus is on staying true to yourself and your principles, you're not always going to be the best salesperson.
You're probably
best
not going to be a good
salesperson
salesperson at all.
The salesperson is
Yeah.
the person who's able to sell you this water bottle because isn't this water bottle so amazing?
Yeah.
And that's like not how Chris and I run our business. And
No.
I don't believe that's how Rickson
No.
ever ran his business.
He never ran it.
His
that way.
goal
Yep.
was not to be a businessman, but to be a martial artist. And when we put martial artist ahead of business person, we're not as successful
Yes.
in business
I think that's
and
true
branding.
of everything. How our human brains work. Like one of the things that I'll use all the time. I'm probably going to make some art person really mad out there. But Andy Warhol is branded into our brains. We all know the Campbell's Soup Cam, Marilyn Monroe, and because it's branded in there, and because it's worth all the kinds of money, we can't help but subconsciously value it more because it becomes valuable. But even Andy Warhol said, I'm a fraud. And it's almost like he postmodern tricked the world into believing stuff that isn't art is art, which is also what the French artist Duchamp did. He took a urinal and signed it, and then that's art. And so it's like it's trying to tell you as an art person that art is all bullshit, but at the same time, it's still art because what you did was you sold people on an idea and you brainwormed into a collective. And I think with the jiu-jitsu, and again, I don't think it's bad that Horion did such a good job at promoting his family and their jiu-jitsu.
Because that's his strength. Though.
That's his strength.
And we don't all have
Yep.
that. We don't. He was gifted in a
Yes.
certain way, and his way
Yes.
more so like Rickson is gifted in the way of
Yes.
being this warrior, and Horion was much more good at
Yes.
spreading the brand.
And Horion was definitely a charismatic, nice guy. But
He had organizational skills, is what you're telling
yes,
me.
everything
a lot
was
of
listed.
times
Yep.
we don't have organizational
we
skills. So if you don't have someone doing that, then
Yes.
your brand isn't going to blow up. It's just
It's not.
that's how
Yep.
life works.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure it's in Breathe, but like Rickson should have, could have, would have been the first UFC guy, but there's a beef with Horion. And like
It is in Breathe. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
And I remember during that period of time, there was a lot of like heated resentment between brothers and cousins. But the one thing they did have is they never talked shit about each other publicly. Like that's it, kind of like that mafia thing. It's like it stays within the family, blood always kind of model. It was interesting, and so Rickson went to Japan. Eric Paulson helped him get into Pride, and of course, he cleaned everyone up. And Eric was training with Rickson then, and for some reason, I think it was because Rickson left to go train or off on one of his things where he's a guru for a while, that Eric Paulson then, I brought him to Machado's, and he hit it off well because the Machado's were so warm and friendly and nice. And I'm not saying Rickson wasn't nice, but Rickson was on a mission.
He's serious.
He's serious, yeah. And so it was, it's the Rickson that I find now is like the Rickson that has never stopped in growth in body, mind, and spirit. And obviously, people know out there, especially if you breathe, some pretty tragic things happen to him that I can't even imagine. And like, just rough stuff. And so,
Yeah, I think, I didn't want to make it sound like I thought that he felt like people weren't worthy of being his students. What I was going to say was that that was kind of my presumption based on my understanding of martial arts, which came from movies, is that that's kind of the energy. But It sounds to me like what you're saying is that he had a real, genuine dedication to this mind, body, spirit development, and a true dedication to the art of jiu-jitsu that just basically doesn't fit the commercial format. And it seems like the more I do martial arts stuff, like commercialization of...
Because you can't see it on 2D film.
Yeah, but also you have to be on your phone all day answering messages and running a business and communicating with people and doing all these things. And if you're just off in in martial arts land, you're not focusing on what business things need to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and like I've heard like Floyd Mayweather saying this exact same thing, giving some advice and some.
And even though I can't stand him, he really is like the best boxer out there. He's untouchable. I know a Connor who lost to him, and I remember like years earlier talking to one of the guys he would spar with, and the guy said, "I've never ever gotten a sting on him. He is so hard to hit with any kind of power." So you hit someone, you get the power. The way he would move out of the power, it's like he was so good at moving away from being punched that he's the master of that. And Ali kind of had that, but I mean, obviously we know Ali's had his head hit pretty hard. And, Rickson, like one of the things that I think he has is when Rickson rolls with you, he feels like he knows if you're a good person or not. He feels like he can feel who you are. And when Rickson would maybe I'm in his guard, he'd say, "Okay, Chris, open my guard." And I'd be trying to open his guard. And then he would find where I have a slight error, and he would force that to go over and over again. And it was like, I thought I knew how to isolate things, but Rickson knows how to isolate the minute stuff. But there's a lot of people out there that, and again, as arrogant as this sounds, they aren't ready for that. So what they get is a new process to go from step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What I feel like I get is that part that you can't see, it's feel. And I can't feel that from a Rickson student or a Rickson sycophant. No one but Rickson is Rickson Gracie.
Yeah, it seems like, how's that going to get preserved into the future? I think that's the thing is, it's great that we have this icon for the art of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. This is the pinnacle icon of how to live, how to do everything. And does it just end?
I personally think it doesn't, that it does end. That you can't be him. Yes, you can try to teach what he taught. You can try to emulate him.
You could mimic
but
his accent.
yeah,
you could do that.
You could do all
Yep.
kinds of stuff, but when he's gone, there's no more Rickson Gracie, and there's other things.
There's
obviously.
other things, other grapplers, but I think that's what makes it valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Is it is unique.
I
And-
feel the same thing about you. When you're done, none of us is going to be Chris Haueter.
No.
There's only one Chris Haueter. And it could be said for many people, for
Yes.
many high-level
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu instructors, unique individuals, different
Yep.
ways and perspectives that they see the world, that they've communicated and influenced large groups of
Yes.
people. And you just don't replicate it. But there are plenty of special people in the world to look up to.
And what I think one of the best analogies of the combat sports is like we're all a rock band, and there's like the original guys out there that created that really great hit song, and then there's a bunch of people who cover that song. Some of them cover it better than the original in terms of their music's tighter and all that, but it's still not the original piece of art. And I think of myself as a guy who does covers, but really I do mashups. I mash up parts of this person's song with that, and I slightly tweak the beat a little, and then I'm making my own art.
But you also put your personality onto everything you do,
Yeah.
which I think is the bigger draw to you
Yeah.
is what you say and how you present information and teach lessons and entertain and all the things that you do in a seminar that is very unique. Hickson wasn't going to his seminar wasn't the same experience as going to your seminar.
No, even
right?
if we had teach the exact same
Exactly.
things.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I've never been to a seminar like yours. I've been to seminars where people say, do this, do that, and you know what I'm saying? Or
Yes,
class or whatever
do.
it is. It's a different feel.
And I mean, just for me, I think that comes from I'm really ADHD, and I have to entertain myself. I have to do something that would keep a guy like me interested, because I have a hard time staying interested after about 40 minutes. You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
oof, I gotta go. And it was really good for me doing all these 2-hour privates with Rickson because I had to discipline.
You said 3 hours.
Some of them were 3.
Yeah.
They were all minimum
God,
of
I
2.
would die.
And I would just, but I used it instead as an approach to improve my art, to learn to concentrate. Because if I'm going to say what is the essence of Rickson jiu-jitsu, what else has he given me a mentor model of, is adaptability. I have to be adaptable to a 3-hour private. I can't do things on my way all the time. And what I'm after in life right now, for all kinds of reasons, chiefly my son, but what's happening in the world, is I'm going to be adaptable. I want to go ahead and go all in, and I want to read all about ODD, what child psychology, what I'm doing right or wrong, because I want to improve, because I'm practicing an art, the art of the being a parent. And I'm trying really hard to improve my skills, and I feel like I'm a blue belt at it, like being a perfectly great dad.
If you want to get to black belt, you might need to have some more kids.
Oh, geez, I know.
And you'll need a different wife because
Oh, yeah, no.
this shop is closed.
No, I have no interest in having any more kids. What I would love to do, and I've always wanted it, was if I had a bunch of money, I would adopt. I would foster unwanted
with your
12-year-olds with my next wife. Yeah, I really would. I would do that.
Yeah, we have considered doing some stuff like that.
It's the most honorable thing in the world is to devote your life to some child other than you. I find
stick
that.
with dogs because they don't talk back.
Yeah,
So I will foster all the dogs.
the dogs are good to foster.
You can foster all the children. I'm can hardly so stressful,
It
and
is
because
hard.
you adopt a kid doesn't mean it's not going to be so stressful, regardless of
Yeah.
how old they are.
It's gonna
It's
be
not that I
stressful.
don't want to help people, but it will kill me Literally.
Yeah.
The kids are sucking the life out of me. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, kids, if you're watching this 20 years from now.
Yeah.
I have so much gray hair.
No, I feel that for sure.
Yes,
100%.
I wish my son especially would just realize the devotion of his mother and like have it humble him a bit, you know, like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I think this is an interesting spot to move this conversation along a little bit. I just wanted to go kind of, I think the interesting thing is that you could meet Rickson like today or yesterday and you could learn everything about him, but very few people have gone through this growth arc with him like you have. And that you met him very early on and you saw this whole thing and he's kind of been part of your process the whole way through. So I kind of wanted to read a little history, but you look like you got something to say.
I feel like I got a chunk of the early Rickson, and now I get a chunk of this Rickson. I did not get that middle part.
Okay.
With Rickson, yeah.
Well, let's get a little history down, and then maybe you can talk about what you've experienced watching this arc. So, November 21st, 1959, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Rickson was born the third son of Grandmaster Helio Gracie. He's the father to Hoxton, Crone, Kawan, and Kaolin. We regard him as the pinnacle icon in the art of jiu-jitsu and the purest form of jiu-jitsu. He fought in Luta Libre, Pride, various jiu-jitsu tournaments, jiu-jitsu super fights, street fights, and dojo storm style challenge matches, maintaining a record of 465-0 between the late 1970s and the year 2000. So in 1980 was his first like majorly publicized fight against Zulu in Brazil, and then in the year 2000 he fought Masakatsu Funaki.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any matches that were saying that it was a decision of any sort. Every single match that I could find, it was a decisive win by submission or TKO. So through all this,
that's what like inspired Jean-Jacques, who Rickson gave him for years privates, and then he won everything by. I don't care about points. I submit the guy. You know, it's that kind of
nice fight to finish. Okay, so we kind of he's kind of known for this holistic style of integrating mind, body, and spirit into his practice, with heavy emphasis on lifestyle, breathing, and then the spiritual development part, which seems like is not being on his phone like I am right now. We got a glimpse of this in the 1999 documentary Choke. I'm sure you guys have seen that. Epic. But after the tragic passing of his son Hoxton, he retired from competition and continued to teach and working on applying his knowledge of jiu-jitsu to mastering himself and his daily life, which kind of sounds like your transition that you're in right now.
And I think a lot of great athletes kind of just stop and they don't go into that next growth phase.
Yeah, that's the interesting part is, what did that look like to you? Like you felt this, when you first met him, it was this obvious warrior,
it was like
dominant
meeting
guy.
a samurai from the 12th century. You know, you're blown away.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I actually, as a side note, I kind of have a similar, like Clifton. I can remember seeing Clifton for the very first time, being on the mat as like a brand new white belt, like one of my very first classes, and having him like walk up. He was a brown belt, and having him come out of the locker room and like tying his belt still and finishing tying his belt, and like all the tattoo. He has crazy tattoos. He's almost like full like the Yakuza suit or whatever. He like has that. I could see some of the tattoos hanging out of the gi, and just like the way that he carried himself and tied his belt and stepped onto the mat. And I remember being like, whoa, it was a real samurai, you know? So you experienced that. And then what is it like today? Like, what does this growth arc look from your perspective? And
well, I think, I mean, I've kind of like, so often I imagine whenever I'm either rolling with a person or trying to get my son to do something or whatever, sometimes I try to close my eyes because I realize how much our eyes alter what we feel. Because we see it with our eyes, then we're thinking about it, and it's occupying an aspect of your brain. And the combat sports, the jiu-jitsu, are so, especially the grappling arts, are so much feel arts, not see arts. It's not seeing the person reach up and grab. It's feeling whether they're grabbing here or here. It's feel. And so from like one of the great things that I've gotten, which has enhanced my own, like on my own, I would, like ever since we were the blue belts, out here last night, Chris, close your eyes when you train and feel it. And it's like, I see how my eyes trick me, how my perception of things that I'm seeing are altered of the way that the quote unquote reality is. But then what is reality, right? There's levels of it. And I think I think when you watch a jiu-jitsu move on a screen, you can get the rough steps. And if you drill it, you can end up feeling parts of it where, I should lean that way, I should lean that way. And so it's kind of one of those things where, like, I believe that if the average jiu-jitsu black belt was suddenly blind, would he know they were training with another black belt? Would they know it was? With Rickson, you definitely feel a different height. Not that other people don't have that, because everyone does. Because, like, Jean-Jacques is still improving his art, right? And I'm trying to still improve my art. And I think that's kind of the thing about it, is never stop being a student of the art.
Yeah, I think what I'm curious to talk about is like making this transition. Like Rickson had this tragic family incident that sort of pulled him out of competition, and it was no longer about fighting other people, but like fighting himself and trying to like master himself in a way. And I guess like what's the feeling that you get from someone that's really working hard on that, as opposed to someone that's working hard on kicking everybody's ass in the ring? I think that's kind of the interesting thing. And I kind of feel like ultimately that's the ultimate value of jiu-jitsu and martial arts, as we've been talking about it, is at the end of the day, like, you're not really looking to kick everybody else's ass. You're looking to master yourself.
Yeah, I think, like, when you go to a martial arts class, you can't help but think, I'm going here to learn how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm going to, now, it's like my perspective is, how can I improve my art and adapt it to my now aging body?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a totally different intent than I had for most of my grappling thing. Like, I love rolling. I love competing. Like, competition is fun, but what I would love is like in the garage when I have a peer and we would be going at it. One of those feelings where you don't know if 5 minutes passed or 10, but you are totally in the now, absorbed in that. Like, because I don't get that through the athletic aspect of it anymore, I try to find that through the art aspect of it. And I try to roll in a way, and I don't always accomplish it every time I add an explosion or little strength or speed, but I'm trying to limit the amount of athletics and attributes and maximize the leverage, knowledge, cunningness, and guile. And part of that is, like I often say, and I've been saying this for years, whenever you get your new belt or new stripe as a black belt, you should try to erase whatever you know and start as if you're brand new.
I think, Tobin, what you're talking about, I'm not super old yet, but I'm kind of imagining that as we go through life, if we don't quit jiu-jitsu, we're going to have to figure out some other way to relate to it. And that's basically what Chris is saying as well.
Yes.
And for Rickson, it sounds like that became very much about like improving himself spiritually. And I think that for all of us, I mean, and it could happen at a younger age, but for those of us who started young and were highly competitive, maybe we were just thinking about it as like a bang it out, win, you know, exhaust yourself. And then when we lose that, we have to try to find a different focus or we can't participate anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in that, I kind of feel like I'm in that boat.
You're
like
now, you've in the last
made the,
6 months.
I've made the crossover to the line of how am I going to relate to this and what do I have to give to it? And what can I still get from it?
Yep.
Or do I move on and do something else with my life? Right?
And it is one of those things that every aging combat sport athlete knows is you do have to start being a little bit more protective about who you roll with. And I have found that if I start off each roll relaxed and slow, most of the time, if they're experienced, they're not going to come at you a million miles an hour. But sometimes they do. And I would rather be relaxed, framed, a flow when they're coming at me 100 miles an hour than trying to match that. Because it's that matching of it I've found where then I'm really sore afterwards or I get hurt. And I don't want to get hurt anymore. And that's kind of the new goal of my art is like when I say it's not who's good, it's who's left. If I want to be left, I got to change what I do.
Yeah, and it's adapting.
And Rickson has clearly been through that process.
Hey, Chris, it's not who's good, it's who's left has taken on a whole new meaning.
Yes.
Since we've aged. Because before, it used to mean like,
don't
you'll
quit.
be somewhere and you'll get a black belt, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like, you know, we're just with our canes and our walkers.
You might have to have a hip replacement. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the application to your personal life is interesting. You know, you were talking earlier about being able to adapt to parenting, being able to do all these different things, and I think that thing about Rickson's interesting, where it's like here's someone that mastered the art, and then how are they now applying this to their life? And I guess I'm like so far removed, but I mean, I know he just made a big move across the country, so he made a big adaptation, and
and he adapted. And I mean, I'm definitely, I don't want to sound like I'm one of those like Rickson worshiping guys. Because the message I get him is don't worship other people. Be yourself. Do your jiu-jitsu. And that's a good message. Be your own hero. Don't have a hero. Be your own hero.
And that also applies to like people who are really good at running businesses might want you to worship them. They might want you to like be really excited to do everything and buy whatever. And I mean, and I'm sure Rickson likes to sell his merch, but it's not like about worshiping him, but maybe about representing his jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's interesting. That's all interesting stuff. I think that's enough consideration on Rickson for today. And if
it's all he gets.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
He doesn't want it.
Just part of the thing is that
he won't be listening to this because he's not on his phone.
Yeah. So, but he does have. So it's going to be hard for you to get a class with him to the people out there.
I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's some people that get classes with him that have gone to like extreme lengths to try to get those classes, and they've gotten them. And I think that's kind of what it is. If you want to go super extreme, then you might be able to.
It's only for the extreme.
But he does have an online, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Did you want to do a shout out?
You're ready for this?
The cool thing is you can get some online instruction and you can learn a bunch, you know. I know that, Chris, you're harping about the essence and the feeling of it, but if you're going to be getting technical details and stuff, what a better place to get it than Rickson online.
I mean, obviously that's the pinnacle.
Yeah,
source.
I mean, we have an online thing, our Combat Base Club, and I feel like we have stuff that we can contribute if people like to connect with us.
And I think
we have question and answer sessions where we do it live. So people submit questions,
Yep.
we send out the answers, we interact with our students. I don't know if Rickson does that as much as we do.
No, I'm not sure.
But he also has an online academy.
Yes.
And it's the only place in the world for learning directly from Rickson Gracie. A subscription gives you access to new videos where he teaches techniques and more. You also get access to their entire catalog with dozens of hours of content. Just dozens? We have hundreds. No, I'm just kidding. You can go to Rickson Gracie. Every technique video is a class taught directly by Rickson Gracie. Nothing stands between you and his knowledge. Now you can improve your techniques, understand Rickson's invisible jiu-jitsu, and even get insider info on the rich history of the Gracie family. So don't waste your time and sign up now. You can be a member to multiple subscription sites. And I
Yes.
think his is like $100 a year or something like that.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
No, it's like a couple $500 or something.
Oh,
for
okay.
you.
They raised
But-
the price. So,
but-
like, I think Chris has a subscription,
I do.
right?
Yep.
I have one.
You have one?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the thing is though, right? The way you're describing the way he taught his classes is he'd show you some technical steps, do 1, 2, and 3, and then you can go get those steps online,
You can get the
And then-
steps online.
and then you
yes.
can find the essence by practicing, right? And I think he'd
Perhaps.
probably endorse that, right?
I'm going to say, I mean, that's an area. I know that for me, for just me, I have to feel it. But that's me. Maybe other people can watch
Maybe
it
you
online.
can make up your own
and grab it.
essence, Chris.
And I think I'm pretty good at showing the parts of jiu-jitsu that you don't see, that you have to feel. Like I think I'm good at translating it into words and into
Sometimes.
techniques. Sometimes, other
Sometimes he
times
needs my
I
help,
just
right?
call everything this and that.
And you need
put
my
this
help?
here. Yeah, I do.
Because I'm the CEO.
Melissa helps me a lot. A lot of, like, there was a period of time in which, and I tell people all the time, you're going to learn better the jiu-jitsu from my wife than me. Because what you need now is structure and things emphasize what you ought to do. But when you get a little bit down with the road, I can fix your holes. I
Well,
can fill your,
Can I say what
Yeah.
I'm good at? Okay. So sometimes when you have a hard time learning stuff, you have to break it into really small parts.
Yes.
And so I feel like because my brain works in this way where I have to understand little tiny micro movements, kind of like what you're talking about, Rickson, that I can convey that and break it down in kind of like a mathematical way for people. And that's the benefit that I feel like I have given to some people who have been my students before,
yes.
but that I'm not that
Very much
interested
so.
in being the jiu-jitsu teacher.
Yep.
But I can do that.
I have learned a lot watching Melissa instruct the move that I taught her, and then I'll go, God, I forgot that little part of the move. And part of it was because for me, when my body can't move that way anymore, I've adapted and changed, but I might not be showing the whole move because of how I've changed. And then Melissa keeps a much more, when I say structure, I don't want to mean rigidity, though. There's a structure to the way she instructs that you're going to get a better product with fewer privates if you're a white through purple belt, for sure. And then if you're an advanced person, you can find the parts where she's found the essence.
Nice. Right on.
But I'm no Rickson Gracie.
You're the
Not
femme
claiming to
fatale.
be.
No.
You're the CEO.
No, I'm just a lowly woman making sandwiches and cleaning the kitchen with Jesus and the dogs.
And a third-degree black belt.
All right.
I just wear my black belt to cook. I'm a 3rd degree black belt in making sandwiches.
I love good sandwiches. All right, let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, we have a cue, but you want to wrap up? We could do that. Do you want to do a cue? You want to wrap up?
Let's wrap up.
Oh my jeez.
All right. Well, that was a
need to
cool
eat the
discussion. That was
episode.
interesting. I think maybe we could talk about it more sometime in the future, but it's interesting to hear your experience with this. I think it's a cool thing that people are curious about. And I think having the online resource of finding Rickson online is amazing. I think having the resource of you guys online, I can totally vouch for that. Like the combination of like your ability to teach and your ability to teach is really, really cool and really special. And I think having that resource is amazing. And yeah, let's wrap it up. Let's get out of here. So on 3, you guys want to do it?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Pound,
like, and subscribe. All right. That was all right.
He's like, Shady's like, pound, like, and subscribe. Just come and go.
Yeah, right.
So smart.
Well, we all have targets on our backs these days.